I'm going to just remind people to mute. All right. So my name is Abby Huff. I'm the Indiana Main Street Senior Program Manager. With me today is Armika Bash Gasper, who is a CDBG Program Manager. And we're going to talk to you about CDBG today. So with that, Armika is going to start us off and then I'll take over after that. So we have scheduled about an hour and a half today. So here we go, Armika.
Hello and good morning. As Abby mentioned, my name is Armika, and I am going to be talking to you today a little bit about CDBG and let me just get control here. I'm going to try it again. Thank you all for being here today. We're super excited to give you a little bit of CDBG knowledge. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the team. We're going to provide an overview, talk about some key terms and definitions, eligibility and entitlements versus non-entitlements. We're going to go over the 3 national objectives, what activities are eligible and ineligible, and the roles of a grant administrator, a community liaison, and grant services. And then we will have Abby take it away with the Indiana Main Street CDBG project. So here we go. All right. All right, I'm going to turn my camera off and all right, so this is the CDBG team, and CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grants. Again, I'm Armika Bash-Gaspar, CDBG Program Manager in Okra. I manage our planning grants and the grant administrator certification training and the continuing education. We also have Pam Guerrero. She's the Senior CDBG Program and Policy Analyst, and she manages our policy analysis and development, the policy implementation, and she also manages some of the programs like the COVID-19 Response and CARES Act, Green Infrastructure, and also Stellar Pathways. One of our newest CDBG program managers is Tanea Simon. She manages the construction grants, owner occupied rehabilitation, which we call OOR, and the recovery housing, which is RHP for all the acronyms, and she does our income surveys. Currently, we are hiring for a replacement, and that CDBG program director, we are hoping to be hired soon. So fingers crossed for that. All right, moving along. What is CDBG? So the federal CDBG is a federal program that's administered by HUD and provides the funding for all of the community development, the economic growth and infrastructure improvements. Let's see. So for Indiana, Okra manages the CDBG funding for the non-entitlement communities, and they will submit applications on a competitive basis. And we will go over that a little bit here in a moment, but some of the activities include things like infrastructure, public facilities, acquisition. It includes some downtown renewal and historic preservation and planning. So, yeah, that is who we are and what we do. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about who is eligible. So, non entitlement communities are eligible. And when we get into entitlements versus non entitlements, what we're saying is an entitlement community has more than 50,000 residents, and they will not qualify for CDBG funding through Okra because they receive their funds directly from HUD. Non-entitlements are communities that have less than 50,000 residents, and they will receive the money through us because we help to manage those funds. And any unincorporated areas, they have to apply through their county. So when we talk about the entitlement communities in the state of Indiana, this is what it looks like. So there are other communities eligible for CDBG funds. The blue highlights for the city of Indianapolis and Hamilton County is because Hamilton County is an entitlement county, but it has non-entitlement areas, and they include towns, the town of Arcadia, Cicero, Atlanta, and Sheridan, and that's because they have less than 50,000 residents. And Indianapolis virtually makes up the entire portion of Marion County. And Marion County, Indianapolis is known as the Unigov. However, there are a few communities within Marion County, such as Speedway, Lawrence, Beech Grove, and Southport that are not a part of Unigov, and they would be eligible for CDBG assistance. So just to give you a little bit of insight on that, now we're going to talk about how Okra determines its activities through the funding that's distributed. And basically, the consolidated plan is a comprehensive document that identifies the state's housing and community development needs. And it guides our funding needs throughout a 5-year funding period. So currently, right now, we're going through our action plan yearly update. And Pam, our who I introduced you to earlier, is working very hard to make sure we get all those changes and updates done. And then when HUD adopts it, so they have to adopt the action plan before it goes into effect, and that basically lets us know what we're doing and making sure that we're in compliance with all of HUD's requirements. Now, how do you know if you qualify? It's a great question. Eligibility versus fundability is what we're going to talk about now. So it's important to note that just because a particular activity is deemed eligible by the CDBG program, it doesn't automatically mean that it can or will be funded. The consolidated plan is a primary tool that is used to accomplish this. But through the consolidated plan process, states can get an understanding of the units of general local government, which we call UGLUG, what their needs are, which in turn provides the framework for the implementation of our CDBG activities. So just because you meet eligibility and national objective, it doesn't mean you will get funded, but that is the only way that you can be funded. So, what is a national objective? Here are just a few, here are the three main categories of national objectives, and it is benefiting low to moderate income persons, slum blight, and urgent need. There are others like housing and jobs, but they're not typically ones that we see, that we do, but they are also considered low to moderate. And some of our other state agencies that we partner with, like IHCDA, they can assist with housing and jobs. But I just wanted to throw that in there, that these are the three main national objectives. So LMI provides benefits to low to moderate income persons. For CDBG, each funded activity must meet one of three of these OKRA national objectives, and at least 70% of the expenditures that we get from HUD for the funding each year must be used for activities that qualify under the first of these. LMI projects must benefit 51% of the service area, which we will also get into. But slum and blight aid in the prevention or elimination of slums or blight, and urgent need provide funding for projects that have a particular urgency because existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community. Now, we're going to break that down a little bit. Area benefit to low to moderate income broken down into LMI persons. The area benefit, this is the most commonly used, and it shows that the service area, which is basically the people inside the town or a neighborhood within the town, meets 51% of the LMI, and that is defined by HUD. It is a family or household that has an annual income of less than 80% of the median income. We check that through the census, and it's either by metro area or county every year. And a town's eligibility could change, so we will need to see if they qualify every year. The LMI area is determined by census data and income surveys. And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but the grant administrators who work with our programs use a mapping element to show the LMI area so they know the area that we're working within. And they would determine if a census of a service area needs to be done by interviewing each person or household, but it has to be every household when you use census data. If for some reason you think that the area is not correctly represented in a community, an income survey is then used, and it can be conducted if it's less than 51%, and it only uses a portion of the census information, but it allows you to use a survey that will allow you to use a different level of data to determine if you're still eligible. The LMI limited clientele are people who, oh, can you guys make sure that you're all muted? I think I just heard someone talking to their little baby puppy doggy. Thank you. The LMI limited clientele are people who are going to be served in the project. So it's a specific service that requires income documentation for each person that's being served. So this kind of breaks down limited clientele. And then we have presumed class, which HUD and Congress, they deem this class as above 51%. They do not require an income documentation, and they don't need to meet the area benefit. But it also is not a geographical area that they use for presumed class. They are the only people being served, and they automatically qualify for this based on that classification. So just to break that down a little bit, a presumed class would be any of these sections. So you cannot mix them. You can only use one of these for your project. But in some instances, the project may qualify under the limited clientele criteria. They're typically serving one of these specific groups of individuals in a community, but not necessarily the entire community. And again, I'm just going to emphasize that you cannot mix these. So you can't do abused children and battered spouses for your project. You can only do one if you're trying to use the presumed class LMI. And then we're going to talk a little bit about slums or blighted. Just because you have a blighted structure in your community that meets the criteria, it doesn't mean it is automatically getting funded. You have to show that it is a threat to human safety and public welfare. Also, oops, sorry. There are two bases that we go on when we're looking at slum or blight. And area basis it's a neighborhood which it has defined boundaries, and a majority of the buildings or a portion of them are considered slum blight and they meet the criteria. The spot basis is parcel by parcel, or basically a single property. If you're meeting the objective and you want to do another eligible activity that would prevent the slum and blight in that area, like Main Street revitalization, could be a way to meet that eligibility and criteria. For example, you would be able to make sure that it meets the criteria and you can use the spot basis for your national objective. So the last national objective is urgent need. OCRA seldom funds urgent need projects. These projects address a CDBG defined urgent situation, meaning the activities designed need to meet community development needs and have a particular urgency. In cases where the urgent need projects have been funded, they typically addressed disaster relief or recovery. So any city or community funds that, so basically a community needs to make sure that they've exhausted all of their funds into this project, and they can't say like, this isn't, these funds are earmarked, or we don't want to use these funds, but we have this urgent need. You would not qualify for the CDBG funding with that as an example. CDBG is the last option that can be used. So the community itself has to use all of its funding toward the project that you're asking for the CDBG funds for. And then CDBG would be the last option in order to use those funds. So that is urgent need. So once a project meets national objective, it's important to note that just because it's eligible, it doesn't mean it's automatically going to get funded. And you'll hear that a lot when we talk about eligibility and national objective. But within the basic framework of national objectives, you would essentially work with a community liaison who would walk you through making sure that your project will meet these. Once the national objective is met, then that's when we'll take next steps to administer the program and tell you more about how that works. So, what is considered an eligible activity? CDBG has eligible activities. They're listed here, and some examples would be like if a town applies for the MSRP funds for a downtown streetscape project, it must document how the project benefits LMI residents or revitalizes the blighted areas. And we just kind of talked a little bit about slum and blight. So, like historic preservation, public services, privately owned utilities, these are the types of eligible activities. Let's see, when we get into ineligible activities, these are just a few. General government expenses, we do not cover that. Any lobbying activities, definitely ineligible. If you're purchasing equipment, anything that can be moved, anything that can basically be moved to somewhere else would be considered ineligible. Most things that we purchase has to be fixed, something that's fixed to the building or the area that it is that the project is in. And we can get into more of that later. So what are you eligible for? And give me just 1 second. I'm just going to take a quick drink of water. I'm starting to get the hoarse throat. So how do you know what you're eligible for once you meet the national objective? Excuse me. So construction grant programs have all of these options. You're eligible for WDW, which is wastewater drinking water. You can install new transmission mains. Um, you can replace old treatment plants, things like that. SIP, which here you see is stormwater improvements. You can replace existing stormwater. Let's see, storm drainage lines and inlets. Those are qualifying activities under these programs. Renovating a daycare, construction of a new fire station, or creating a library. Those are things that you can do under the public facilities program. And then types of planning projects. So utility studies, excuse me, functioning plans would be things like utility studies, um, economic development, feasibility studies, historic preservation. All these plan types have minimum planning requirements that must be met, but these are the types of planning projects that you would be eligible for. Um, Other list of things to consider: parks and recreation, broadband access, placemaking, things like that. Now, just briefly, just to give you a little bit of insight on the construction grant process, there's a project development, application award, administration, implementation, and the monitoring and administrative closeout process that we do for all the programs essentially, but this is the phase of a project. I know that some of you are familiar with this, but just as a visual of all the components that go into after the application is accepted into our CDBG process, this is what a construction grant process would look like. And then you have the planning grant process, which it has a few variations from construction, but there's a lot that goes into it after you submit the application. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of that. The basic differences between the planning versus construction grants is the planning grants are per quarter, so there's 4 a year, and the construction grants are 2 rounds per year. So this is just a little breakdown of that. There's a little bit of information on the breakdown. So all of these require 10% of the local match, but here's some of the plans and some of the maximum grant amounts for planning. And then the CDBG programs in general, excuse me, you have the planning grants, which are up to 90,000. And then here are the breakdowns for the CDBG programs under construction. So wastewater, all the ones we just talked about. It's just you have to have a max. And so we just wanted to give you some information on that. So why must non-entitlement local government be involved? I know this is something that a lot of you are interested in learning about, but it's pretty basic. Since CDBG is a federal program, non-entitlement cities or town governments must administer the funds, and that is to ensure that the compliance is held with the HUD regulations, and they provide the financial oversight. They submit the required reports, and they act as the responsible entity in case of compliance issues. So everything that I just showed you in those last couple slides, that tells you the process of the applications after submission. Um, the local government has to be involved in order to make sure that everything is followed through according to HUD standards. So the community liaisons play a huge part in this process as well. And I just wanted to make sure that you all know that you go through your community liaison in order to initiate any of the projects, and they represent Okra on behalf of the Lieutenant Governor, and they are the two-way conduit between the communities and the state agencies. So we want to make sure that you appreciate your community liaisons and understand why they're important. They're the first point of contact, like I just said, and they make sure that the right people get in the room together, and they're your guide, and they answer the questions and especially eligibility, which we talked briefly about, and make sure that the requirements are met for your project so that your communities can be successful and apply competitively with the best knowledge that they can provide. So that is your community liaison. They also will assist with the application management process. So they're there for the proposal and the application requirements. They offer feedback and technical assistance, which I'm sure some of you have inquired about or at least have experienced. And they go through the thresholds and they do the scoring when the applications get to that part of the process. And then they follow through with some of the other elements, like especially when comprehensive plans are awarded for the planning side. They will help and assist and guide through that process and make sure that all those updates happen even after the community is awarded. So they play a huge role. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of all that they do. Now, we're going to just discuss briefly the role of an OKRA certified grant administrator. So as a grant administrator, the grant management for the GA is what we're going to call them, is about administrating those CDBG dollars, those funds. But it doesn't just end with the application process. It's it's literally just the beginning of the work that the GAs do. So they have to understand the federal regulations, the compliance requirements, and they have to provide the detailed reporting to us, and it has to be effective and it has to have the highest impact. So the certified GAs, they have the knowledge and the skills to execute various stages of the CDBG grant life cycle, and that's from the application all the way through administration. So in order to secure the funding needed, especially when implementing projects, the communities need to make sure that they have someone on their team that will lead them through the process. And I mean, essentially, the GAs are responsible for handling the complex federally funded grants at that high level. And everything that we talked about with the CLs and the all of the parts and pieces of the grant and construction grants, the GAs are responsible for making sure that those happen um, effectively, like I said. So basically, basic requirements for a certified grant administrator. They have to become certified, and that is, and they have to complete a series of training sessions that CDBG is responsible for providing. And they have to pass all of the exams. So there are 4 exams that they have to pass in order to even become certified, so that they can learn how to do all of these things. Um, uh-oh. Oops, sorry, I had a my screen timed out on me, so sorry about that. So basically, they have to understand how all of these things play together and how well they work together in order to do a great job and make sure that everybody's on board with making sure that everything comes together for the communities at the end of the day. So they also follow through the whole life cycle of the grant process. And here's some more of their duties. I think the one of the key things here is the grant administrators help to advance Okra's vision. So at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we all make sure that the laws and the regulations are followed. So that is the reason why we work with our grant administrators. So here's another piece of the CDBG process. All of these areas are things that these are part of the knowledge and skills that the grant administrators have to have, but also the community liaisons. They have to have an idea of all of these things as well, so they can provide you all with the technical assistance that's required to get the work done. Um, the community engagement piece is huge for the grant administrators, and just want to highlight they're there to make sure that the community has everything that they need as well. So they reach out to them just like the CLs that we call the community liaisons, the CLs. So, there's the residents and then all of the other people in the local government that are involved in making sure these things happen. And as you can see, Main Streets is also a part of that, but the community engagement piece is huge for the grant administrators as well. And they can touch a lot of different parts and pieces of the community that sometimes, um, we're not all able to get out there and do. So they're putting the work in and they're making sure that they're meeting and greeting. Let's just say that, meeting and greeting. Um, so local match is something that is required when you're doing the CDBG application. And I know that you all are pretty much aware of this, but a minimum match of 10% is required from the communities to make sure that you're putting some of your money or your dollars into the project to say, hey, we really want this, and here's how we're contributing our piece. It can also be through in-kind um, donation. It doesn't have to just straight come from the budget of the community, but there's other ways that the 10% can match, can be matched, sorry. Um, I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about grant services and who they are and what they do as well. So grant services, so they're under the business office of the Lieutenant Governor. And Adam Moschel is the grant services director. So he is the one essentially that is making sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to be doing through policy and all of the administration of the projects. So they the award process, all of those things are handled through grant services, and we really rely on them and their support. And in the background of what they do, they're still available to speak with anyone. If you call them and you want to talk to them, they're there and they're available. But they also do a lot in the weeds that a lot of people don't really know that they do. So um, the Catherine Johanchis is the GMS administrator, and she also handles a lot of the work that goes in on the GMS side. So that's our electronic system that we use to keep track of all of our grants, and it's where the grant administrators will put all of the paperwork in that they've gathered and make sure that that's working and they have access and all of those things. So Catherine is the administrator for that, and just want to make sure that you guys are aware of the grant, all of the grant managers and the work that they do for us. The pieces I think that are most helpful for you all to see visually is the dark blue area down here where it says environmental review, procurement, site control, labor standards, implementation, modification, monitoring, and closeout. So pre-award, award, and post-award processes are things that the grant services team touches. But I want to make sure that you understand that they ensure all of the financial compliance and they perform all the audits that happen. So if so, some of this was just to give you guys a little bit more information about CDBG, but if you're interested in learning more about CDBG, a deeper dive into the overview of what we do in our programming, um, there is an upcoming CDBG training. It's the first training that's available. It's called the 101, and it will be on Thursday, April 10th. It's an all-day training. If any of you are interested, you're able to register. It is also on our calendar, our Okra calendar that's on the web, our web page. And you can just learn more about it. And then if you're interested in becoming a grant administrator, we will teach you all of everything that you need to know about becoming a grant administrator for CDBG in order to administer these funds to the communities. So is that is my time. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we will try to address them as you are entering them, or we will reach out to you after the webinar and you're able to And we can reach out to you afterward and make sure that your questions are answered. So at this time, are there any questions?
Feel free to unmute yourself as well if you have a question.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will still be here if any other questions come up. Abby, go ahead and I will give you back control.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to spend the rest of our time kind of talking about CDBG projects that are specifically for our Indiana main streets. So first off is our downtown revitalization plan. So the planning grant programs are meant to leverage CDBG, are programs that leverage CDBG to encourage communities to plan for long-term holistic improvements. So the funding breakdown for downtown revitalization plans are populations over 2,000 are limited to $40,000 and populations under 2,000 are limited to 30,000. And then as Armika was saying, communities must provide that 10% match. So, why do we encourage you to have a downtown revitalization plan? First of all, this helps local officials identify the necessary strategies for improvement to that downtown core area. Through knowing where they are currently as a community, that helps them plan for the future and what the future looks like going forward. It sets a path for downtown revitalization, which is more, it's not just the physical improvement, but it's about bringing people together. You know, we always say Main Streets work with, not for communities. So it's about working with communities. Vibrant downtowns, main streets, and city centers give people a reason to return to your neighborhoods or communities over and over again. And successful economic development is increasingly about creating great, walkable, and connected places. So remember, the Main Street program is economic development. So planning for economic development is a way to keep your program on track and also your local unit of government. Um, Downtown revitalization plans are now a requirement. So, a current, and when we say current, we mean within the last 5 years, downtown revitalization plan is a requirement for communities that want to apply for future growth opportunities and funding streams through the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. Indiana Main Street communities that are not located in an entitlement community at all levels can apply for the CDBG plan through Okra. So whether you're an ODAN or up to a nationally accredited Main Street, you can apply for funding for your downtown revi plan. The application timeline and process. So applications, as Armika said, are accepted quarterly via the Indiana Electronic Grants Management System. So that GMS, you'll hear that term, that's what we're referring to. Applicants are encouraged to meet with their community liaisons to go over their applications, either in person or virtually. So, although it's not a requirement for planning grants to meet with your community liaison, we highly encourage it. They're, as Armika said, they're very knowledgeable about the application process, about just the how these grants come together, how they get reviewed. So we highly recommend that as soon as you're looking at applying for one, you get in touch with your community liaison. Amrika touched briefly on minimum plan requirements. These are what are required for the downtown revite plan. So there needs to be a list of community assets. So this is like those things that make your community unique, to describe who you are as a community. Your existing district conditions. So this is talking about like what are your building conditions, street conditions, what's the pedestrian experience in your downtown. There needs to be a downtown vision and key goals. And then how are those going to be implemented? And what are the different options for implementation? And then also action items. So for full minimum plan requirements, I do encourage you to go visit the CDBG website so you can see it there. It's www.in.gov/OKRA/CDBG/planning-grants. Okay, the next program is our Main Street Revitalization Program. So, Okra will award MSRP grants to eligible applicants to assist Indiana Main Street communities with streetscape projects intended to revitalize their downtown area. So there is a total of 2 million. This is a by bi-yearly, every other year allocation. As of right now, it's opposite our preserving program. Uh, this is a little different this year because we didn't have anybody apply for MSRP last round, so that money did carry over to this round. So projects where the total cost is over 2 million can apply for up to 600,000, and projects where the total is under 2 million can apply for up to 500,000. And you see the term up to, it's that's how much money max you can get if your project is not you don't have enough funding or you don't have enough projects or eligible activities uh, to get to your 600 or 500,000. It doesn't mean you just automatically get the 600,000. So we just want to make that clear. You have to justify your costs. So, and then you have to have that 20% match requirement from the community. So we did update this program in 2024. It was on like a 4-year hiatus. So some changes if your organization got this grant, 2020 or before 2020, we have made some changes. So for facades will no longer be included in MSRP. That is now in our preserving program. Applications will be accepted during the 2025 round two. It's this upcoming round of funding, and it is competitive. So just remember that. And then the community has to have completed a downtown revitalization plan within the past 5 years that meets OKRA's minimum plan requirements. If a community has an alternative plan that meets OKRA's requirements for a downtown revitalization plan, they can use that alternative plan with approval from the CDBG program director. Because we don't have a CDBG program director right now, we do ask that you'll just email it to the CDBG inbox, which, well, I'll have that email at the end of today's presentation. So our eligible communities, you must be a current NOMS or IMES community with OKRA. Aspiring IMES and ODNs are not eligible. You must be in a non-entitlement community. And then Main Street organizations must be in good standing with OKRA and Indiana Main Street. And we the required partners. So this isn't just like, hey, the town is sending in an application. This is looking at the local unit of government, the Indiana Main Street organization, and also your business and building owners are all working together through this process. We want to make sure it's collaborative, that everybody kind of has their roles, especially that communication part with the business and building owners. Because if you're doing a streetscape project or a sidewalk project, you still have to work with those businesses so that they're not losing business. So we do require that all of these organizations are working together. Other requirements. So the Main Street organization is in good standing and has met all reporting requirements. So for NOMS and IMES, this means you've submitted your quarterly reporting on time, your end of the year reporting was done. There aren't any issues with reporting. The Main Street organization met their education requirements with Indiana Main Street program during last calendar year. So we'll look at your 2024 program calendar and make sure you met all your education requirements. The Main Street organization is functioning within the Main Street four-point approach of organization, uh, design, economic vitality, and promotion. And then if you're a nationally accredited Main Street, you're also using your transformation strategy. We do add that national accreditation are using their transformation strategy because nationally accredited Main Streets get 10 extra bonus points towards their application. So that's why there's that extra bonus for or extra requirement for our nationally accredited Main Streets. The Main Street organization has work plans for each of their committees that have been submitted to Indiana Main Street. This means that they are in Maestro and they're accessible for us to look at. They're in the process or in the works. And one of those work plans should be around the MSRP project. And then the Main Street organization has been involved in the project development process for the application, and there's a plan for their continued involvement if awarded. So here's our list of current eligible communities. Some communities may not be currently eligible due to open CDBG projects or other program standings, but could be in the future. So just make sure that you are communicating with your local unit of government to see if they have any open projects if you're looking to apply. The local unit of government is the applicant. So, again, that's the collaborative and you're working together. Here's the list of eligible activities. So this is all kind of about traffic control, pedestrian safety. So things like pedestrian lighting, bike lanes, all of this, we're going to go into some examples. So pedestrian level lighting, this is really like, hey, you provided, lighting at the pedestrian level. So it's helping guide the way, helping people, in the evenings, increase walking safety. Protected bike lanes or raised curbs. You can see here, this just, again, that pedestrian experience. Sidewalk bumps outs and extensions, just another way to control traffic. Pedestrian crossings. So if you want to, add some safety for your pedestrians when crossing the street. I do want to note that any street or traffic improvements need to have required approvals and permits. So some of you do have state highways that may go through your main street. You have to get that NDOT approval. Lane reduction. So again, slowing traffic down, maybe adding that center turn lane and bike lanes. Again, you need the appropriate approvals and permits. Walkable environments. So this is things like benches and bike racks and sidewalk expansions, pedestrian and median refuges. So you can see here are just some examples of eligible activities there. Functional art. So bike racks, instead of just going with your normal tubed U-shaped bike rack, you can look at doing something that's a little more fun, a little more artistic. Lighting, you can add some lighting that's both functional but also artistic. Wayfinding or gateway signs. So, any of those like welcome to downtown Jeffersonville is the example here. You can see this is like kind of defining where your downtown is. Also, wayfinding, it helps traffic, both pedestrian and car traffic. Paver patterns. So, this is looking at if you're going, you want to do maybe a lot of people have talked about like painted crosswalks. Well, maybe, the city has a hesitant on painted crosswalks because of maintenance, or you guys as the Main Street is hesitant because of the maintenance. You can do something like paver paver patterns as art. Planters, one thing that you'll hear a lot is that the actual plants are ineligible, but the planters themselves are eligible. So, you can have some art planters or like planters that double as also benches. Um, Speaking of benches, you can look at like fun, different creative ways of having benches. Um, Also, environmental and ADA improvements are eligible. So again, pavers are environmental. It helps with water control, water management. So, you can plant your rain garden infrastructure or your pervious pavements. Again, actual plants are not eligible, but the actual infrastructure is. Energy efficiency, so maybe upgrading your lighting to LED lights, both your traffic signals and your street lights. Uh, Again, street or traffic improvements need to have required approvals and permits. And then also those planting area allocations. So, maybe you're doing streetscape and you want to add places for your greenery. That will qualify. The plants do not. And then ADA improvements. So, things like adding ADA curb ramps, the rumble strips, that kind of stuff, just to improve the ADA experience. Um, Sidewalk rehabilitation or additions. This is another area to help with ADA accessibility. The picture on the left, it probably pretty hard for somebody in a wheelchair with walking difficulties to navigate the different types of sidewalk that were here. So they went in and put all this same. This photo here is they expanded the sidewalk out. So now they can have, the dining experience, the walking experience, and also the refugee experience. So, people can rest and then restaurants also have that ability to add exterior dining. Um, ADA improvements like relocation of signage or utility relocation for accessibility. These are just two examples of how, utility poles were put in that um, hinders the ADA experience. So, working on like, hey, how can we improve that? So the timeline, March 13th, CDBG 2025 construction round one opens for application. Um, April 17th is when the round one proposals are due. Then June 20th is when the full application is due. And then August 21st is when awards will be announced. And there was a forgotten timeline that has nothing to do with it. This is supposed to be 2026 is like when you start implementing the project. All right, and then our other program is the Preserving Main Street program, and we'll come out with more details here in the next month, but we just wanted to do the quick overview. So the objective of the Preserving Main Street program is to create a foundation and framework for a sustainable historic preservation ethic. Um, it's about rehabilitating and preserving historic buildings, build capacities to support local Indiana Main Street organizations and small businesses, ensure a comprehensive downtown revitalization model is developed and able to be replicated, and then community develops a greater preservation ethic by understanding the economic benefit of investing in historic preservation. So up to 2 million in CDBG funds will be used for transformational facade and building improvements over 2 years. Building owners will work with an architect to submit renderings following an OKRA application process. OKRA and Indiana Landmarks will partner to score and award applications. The local unit of government will be responsible for paying for the project's architectural plans. Through this process, building owners will work with the selected design firm to submit an application for preserving funding. The local developed preserving CDBG team, Okra, and Indiana Landmarks will partner to score and award applications. The Main Street organization and the locally developed preservation team will be responsible for raising a 10% match. So that's up to $200,000 for the project, which could include a mix of private and local funds. That total match must be raised before the end of the 2-year designation period. So the Main Street organization's 10% match should be from new funding sources. Of the 10%, 50% will be put into a permanent endowment or revolving loan fund for downtown projects and businesses, and then 50% will be supplied to the Main Street organization for long-term sustainability. So just some ideas of what each of those could be. So for the revolving loan fund or downtown projects, you can do a revolving loan fund where you look at business retention and recruitment or building rehabilitation. You do a forgivable loan, which is usually like a 5-year time frame. So they pay back, a percentage of their loan for 5 years, and then after the 5 years, the rest of their loan is forgiven. You can start up a local grant uh, facade grant program. So grant dollars will do a one-to-one match. So local grants, for example, you have a $10,000 and then the organization provides or the owner provides 10,000. Funding for your Main Street organization. This could be, looking at hiring a staff person. Maybe you want to put a staff benefit package for long-term staff retention into place. Maybe it's real estate investment for your program or things like board and staff long-term professional development. Eligible communities. So your downtown district must be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Again, this is for current NOMS and IMS communities in good standing with OKRA. Must be in a non-entitlement community, and then Main Street organization is in good standing with OKRA. And then again, we require partnerships. So the local unit of government, the Indiana Main Street organization, we do ask that you partner with your local foundation because they can be a great source of helping you raise your 200,000, and then your business and building owners. So the application process overview. So the application will open in May. We will select finalist communities. One year we selected 3 finalists. The next year we selected 2 finalists. It just depends on what applications we get in. Each finalist will have a on-site visit, and then the community is selected, and then there is a kickoff celebration. So here is the timeline. So May 1st, the preserving application will open. July 17th are when preserving applications are due. August 8th is when the preserving finalists are announced. August and September are site visits, and then September 22nd is the preserving announcement, and then October 22nd is that kickoff. All right. Do we have? Oh, so here are the 2 emails. So if you have questions about CDBG that come up as you're working through it, email their inbox. So it's cdbg@okra.in.gov. And then for Indiana Main Streets, if you have questions specifically about like if you're eligible or not, as far as like, hey, are all my work plans looking good? All that kind of stuff, you can email our inbox at indianamainstreet@okra.in.gov. All right. Do we have any questions? And you can either put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. All right. Well, you're pretty quiet right now. Um, if you have anything after we get off today, again, feel free, whatever questions you have, to email the appropriate inbox. And we hope to see some applications come through. As Armika said, if you want to do a deeper dive into Main Street or CDBG 101, that link is available on the CDBG website, I believe, where you can register for that. But we really want to thank you. And Armika, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say thank you for enduring me as I explain CDBG. But if there are any other topics that I may not have gone over, please email the CDBG inbox any other questions you may have or any other topics that you want covered. Um, it's a blank canvas, so we are here for you to try to give you as much knowledge as possible. And yeah, so we're open and available. Just wanted to say thanks again.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. And we hope to see some CDBG applications coming through soon.